fabled heat, where magic meets desire. Subscribe to ignite the fantasy.
The air in the obsidian spire tasted of stale ozone and the metallic bite of blood, a thin, coppery tang that clung to my tongue whenever I inhaled. I pressed my fingertips to the cool obsidian dais, feeling the faint tremor of the ship's hull beneath my skin, a reminder that the resolve was still alive, still bleeding. The vibration was a low, mournful hum, like a dying heart trying to find its rhythm again. Beyond the viewport, Ethel Prime's glittering towers were swallowed by a growing shadow, the planet's shield flickering like a dying pulse, each flash a gasp of light against an encroaching darkness. I am Seraphina Vael, Empress of the 7 Galaxies, and tonight I am not a ruler but a woman clinging to a man's heat in the cold vacuum of space. The weight of crowns and treaties fell away the moment I stepped onto this obsidian platform, leaving only the raw animal need that surged through my veins. Kale, my commander, my lover, stood beside me, his dark uniform slick with sweat that glistened like oil on black steel. His breath was hot against my cheek, a warm current that cut through the chill of the ship's interior. The neural implants in my temples sang a discordant hymn, a chorus of alarms and data streams, but his pulse, steady and fierce, drowned it out. I could feel the heat of his hand on my back, a steady pressure that anchored me to the present. The electric charge of his longing sparked against my skin as he whispered, "We can still turn this," his voice low, rough, threaded with both command and promise. My own desire surged, a fire that threatened to outshine the dying stars outside, a blaze that made my heart pound against my ribs like a war drum. The wormhole roared, tearing the fabric of reality with a sound that was both a scream and a sigh. Metal screamed and the ship shuddered, throwing us both forward for a heartbeat before we steadied ourselves against the obsidian. I reached for Kale, our fingers interlocking with a familiarity that felt ancient, as if we had been bound together in countless battles before this one. His thumb traced the scar on my wrist where his blade had once cut, a reminder of the night we first met on the battlefield of Vespera, when blood and fire had forged our bond. In that instant, the universe narrowed to the space between us, his eyes, molten amber, meeting mine, pleading and fierce. "Choose me," I breathed, feeling his lips brush my ear, his words a promise and a threat rolled into one. The resolve began to collapse, the portal swallowing light, but I held onto his heat, willing the resonance to bind us rather than destroy. The choice was no longer about empire or war. It was about the taste of his blood on my skin, the ache of his longing, and the promise that whatever darkness fell, we would face it together. The ship's alarms blared, a shrill chorus that seemed to echo the frantic beating of my heart. I could see the flickering lights on the control panels, each one a frantic pulse of red and amber, casting jagged shadows across Kale's face. He tightened his grip on my hand, his knuckles whitening, and I felt the tremor travel up my arm, a reminder that even the strongest steel can bend under pressure. "Seraphina," he said, his voice barely audible over the roar, "the core is destabilizing. If we don't reroute the power, the entire spire will implode." His words were a cold splash of reality, but his eyes never left mine. In them I saw the same fierce determination that had driven me to conquer worlds, the same stubbornness that refused to let a single star die. I closed my eyes for a heartbeat, letting the scent of ozone and burnt circuitry fill my lungs, letting the memory of my mother's lullaby drift through the chaos. "We have one chance," I whispered, feeling the weight of centuries of empire settle on my shoulders. "We either ride the wormhole out or we become its victims." The words felt like a prayer, a vow, a promise to the countless lives that depended on us. Kale's hand moved to the control console, his fingers dancing over the holographic interface with a precision that made my breath catch. He pulled a lever, the metal groaning under the strain, and the ship's engines howled in protest. The wormhole's edge pulsed, a jagged line of light that seemed to split the darkness in two. I could see the swirling vortex, a maelstrom of colors that threatened to swallow us whole. "Hold on," he said, his voice a low growl. "I'm rerouting the core, trust me." The words were both a command and a plea, and I felt a surge of something fierce and tender rise in my chest. I pressed my forehead against his, feeling the heat of his skin, the steady rhythm of his heartbeat, the faint scent of his cologne, spiced sandalwood and something metallic like the aftertaste of battle. The ship shuddered again, more violently this time, as if the very fabric of space were trying to tear us apart. I could feel the pressure building in my ears, a deep, resonant thrum that seemed to vibrate through my bones. The Resolve's hull creaked, the obsidian dais cracking in places, tiny shards of black glass falling like rain. "We're losing power," Kale shouted, his voice strained. Divert all remaining energy to the stabilizers. If we don't, the spire will collapse and we'll be lost in the void. I could see the desperation in his eyes, the raw, unfiltered fear that even a commander of his caliber could not hide. Yet beneath that fear was a fierce resolve, a fire that refused to be extinguished. I reached for the emergency lever, my fingers trembling, and pulled with all the strength I could muster. The metal resisted, then gave way, a sharp, metallic scream echoing through the chamber. The wormhole surged, a wave of light that washed over us, blinding and beautiful. For a moment time seemed to stretch, each second an eternity. I could feel the pull of the vortex, a force that threatened to rip us apart, to scatter our atoms across the cosmos. Yet Kale's hand was a solid anchor, his grip unyielding, his eyes locked onto mine with a ferocity that made my blood roar. "Don't let go," he whispered, his breath hot against my ear, his words a lifeline in the storm. I clung to him, my own fingers digging into his uniform, feeling the rough texture of the fabric, the sweat that made it slick. The world around us dissolved into a blur of light and sound, the roar of the wormhole drowning out everything else. I could hear my own heartbeat, a drumbeat that seemed to echo the pulse of the universe itself. Then with a sudden, jarring lurch, the ship broke free. The wormhole snapped shut behind us, a flash of white that faded into darkness. The resolve steadied, the trembling hull settling into a low, steady hum. The obsidian dais glowed faintly, the cracks sealing themselves as if the stone itself had healed. We were still there, still alive, still together. The view outside the viewport had changed. Ethel Prime's towers now shone with renewed vigor, the shield flickering back to life, a pulse of golden light that spread across the planet like a sunrise. Kale pulled me close, his arms wrapping around my waist, his chest pressing against mine. I could feel the rapid rise and fall of his breath, the warmth of his skin, the steady thrum of his heart. "We made it," he murmured, his voice hoarse with relief. I pressed my forehead against his, feeling the faint scar on his cheek where a stray plasma bolt had once grazed him. "We did," I replied, my voice barely more than a whisper, "but we're not out of danger yet. The Empire will demand answers, and the Council will question our choices." My mind raced, cataloging the political fallout that would follow, the accusations, the betrayals, the endless negotiations that would come. Kale's hand slipped to the small of my back, his fingers tracing the curve of my spine. "Let them come," he said, his tone soft yet firm. "We have each other, that's enough for now." A smile tugged at the corner of my mouth, a fleeting, private triumph. I could feel the heat of his hand seeping into my skin, a promise that no matter how many battles lay ahead, we would face them side by side. The ship's lights dimmed, the emergency systems powering down, leaving us in a soft, amber glow that seemed to wrap the spire in a blanket of calm. I closed my eyes, letting the sensations wash over me, the lingering taste of ozone, the faint metallic aftertaste of blood, the lingering echo of the wormhole's roar, and the steady, comforting rhythm of Kale's heartbeat. In that quiet moment I thought of the countless worlds I had ruled, the countless lives I had saved and taken, the weight of a crown that had never truly fit. All of it seemed distant, irrelevant, compared to the simple truth that lay before me. Love, fierce and unyielding, could bend the very fabric of reality. When I opened my eyes, Kale was looking at me with a softness I had rarely seen. "What now, Empress?" he asked, a teasing lilt in his voice. I let out a soft laugh, the sound light and free. "Now we go home," I said, my voice steady, "and we tell the Council that the resolve survived because we chose each other over the Empire." He raised an eyebrow, a grin spreading across his face. "Bold," he said, "but I like it." We turned toward the control deck, the corridors of the Resolve humming with renewed life. The crew, weary but alive, looked up as we passed, their faces reflecting a mixture of awe and relief. I could feel their eyes on us, the unspoken question hanging in the air: would we survive the political storm that followed? I walked with my head held high, the weight of the crown feeling lighter than ever before. The obsidian spire behind us glimmered, its surface now smooth and unmarred, a testament to our perseverance. The ship's AI chimed softly, announcing that all systems were nominal, that the shield around Ethel Prime was fully restored. Kale slipped his arm around my shoulders, his hand resting lightly on my waist. "We've earned a moment," he said, his voice low. "Let's find a quiet place," and he trailed off, his eyes darkening with desire. I smiled, feeling a flush rise to my cheeks. "Yes," I whispered, "let's find a place where the stars can hear us." We made our way to the observation deck, a glass-walled sanctuary that offered an unobstructed view of the cosmos. The stars stretched out before us, a sea of glittering points that seemed to pulse in time with our hearts. The planet below glowed with a soft, emerald hue, its surface alive with the hum of restored life. Kale pulled me close, his lips finding mine in a kiss that was both tender and fierce, a collision of longing and relief. The taste of his mouth was warm, tinged with the faint metallic flavor of his blood, a reminder of the battle we had just survived. My hands tangled in his hair, feeling the soft strands against my skin, the heat of his scalp seeping into my fingertips. We moved together, a rhythm as old as the stars themselves, our bodies aligning in a dance that spoke of survival, of love, of a future yet unwritten. The ship's gentle hum was the only soundtrack to our union, a low vibration that resonated through the floor and into our bones. When we finally lay together, breathless and spent, the universe outside seemed to hold its breath with us. I rested my head on his chest, feeling the rise and fall of his breath, the steady thrum of his heart. "We're still alive," I murmured, my voice barely audible. He pressed a kiss to my forehead, his lips warm against my skin. "And we have each other," he replied, his voice a soft promise. In that moment, the weight of empire, the burden of crowns, the endless wars, all of it faded into the background. All that mattered was the heat of his body, the steady rhythm of his heartbeat, the promise that no matter how dark the void became, we would face it together, hand in hand, heart to heart. The night stretched on, the stars bearing silent witness to our quiet triumph. The resolve floated in the void, a beacon of hope, its obsidian spire now a symbol of resilience. And as the first light of a new dawn began to creep across the horizon of Ethel Prime, I knew that whatever challenges lay ahead, political intrigue, looming wars, the ever-present threat of darkness, we would meet them as one. I turned my face toward Kale, my eyes shining with a fierce, unyielding love. "Whatever comes," I said, my voice steady, "we will stand together. The Empire may demand sacrifice, but we will choose each other first." He smiled, his amber eyes reflecting the starlight. "Always," he whispered, his hand finding mine once more, fingers intertwining as if they had never been apart. The ship's AI chimed again, announcing a new course set for home. The Resolve surged forward, its engines humming with renewed purpose. I felt the familiar pull of destiny, the call of countless worlds waiting for our return, but now it was tempered with the knowledge that love could bend even the hardest steel. As the spire glided through the void, I closed my eyes and let the memory of the wormhole's roar fade, replaced by the soft, steady rhythm of Kale's heartbeat against my own. The future was uncertain, the path ahead fraught with danger, but for the first time in my reign, I felt a certainty that no empire could ever provide, the certainty of love, of partnership, of a shared destiny. And so, with the stars as our witness and the universe as our canvas, we set our course toward home, ready to face whatever darkness lay ahead together.